Welcome to the Kingdom Operator Podcast. I'm Brian Monroe. I spend my days helping founders, executives, and private equity-backed organizations bring structure, clarity, and order to complex businesses. Companies that are growing, stuck, or struggling and looking for a better way. I'm a Christian and a man of deep faith and consider God the head of my organization and household. But this podcast isn't just about better systems. It's about something deeper. Here we talk about what it means to run a business as a steward. Each week, we'll dig into operational challenges, system failures, workflow issues, team dysfunctions, and a variety of other stresses we have in business. This is a place for serious leaders who are ready to lead with clarity, order, and faith and build businesses that truly honor God. Welcome to the Kingdom Operator Podcast. Let's get started. All right, welcome back to the Kingdom Operator Podcast. This is episode 4. And the title of this one is Urgency is a False God. So thank you for joining me. I'm Brian Monroe, and really looking forward to digging into this particular topic with you. And it's kind of been building off of the last couple of topics that we've been covering here. So let's talk about urgency in our business. So we live in a culture that literally worships urgency. We want fast replies. We're looking for fast growth in our business. We're looking for fast scaling. When something's not quite right, we're looking to do a fast pivot. You know, leaders right now in business, we wear busyness like a badge of honor, like it's something that we should be proud of. But here's the really uncomfortable truth about urgency in busyness is urgency often feels productive, but rarely does it produce the results we want, and almost never does it produce peace in your business. So if we go back to kind of talking about episodes 2 and 3, and if you haven't seen those, go check those out. But we talked about how chaos grows in our business and basically pushes clarity out. So chaos grows when clarity in the business is missing, and then bottlenecks form where decisions are being delayed by our leaders. So there's kind of something underneath both of those that really you need to pay attention to, and that's reaction. And reaction correlates nicely with urgency. Reaction is fueled by urgency. So let's take a look at our first Bible verse here, Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Leadership maturity includes recognizing timing, and not everything that feels urgent belongs in the season. So let's take a look at this concept here of urgency. So urgency, and we'll put over here discernment. Discernment. Okay. So we've got these two columns here. In urgency comes across in our businesses as something that's loud. It's often emotional. It's immediate. It's urgent. It's immediate. It is reactive for the most part, and it is pressure driven. Whereas if we take a look on the other side of things, discernment, like the opposite of that, discernment is a little bit more quiet. Discernment is evaluated. Discernment is intentional. It's decisive. Guess I put the L on intentional, decisive, and it is principle driven. Big difference between the two. Urgency is often triggered externally, whereas discernment is cultivated internally. It's almost like it could be like a culture that we're creating internally to organizations. Urgency will say, well, what needs my attention right now? Whereas discernment says, what deserves my attention right now? Look at the difference there. What needs my attention? What's urgent? What's pulling me versus what deserves my attention? If everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. If everything is urgent, then nothing is important. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's take a look at the second verse here, Luke 10:41-42. Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. So even in this example, Jesus was basically trying to calm Martha down a little bit and say, you're anxious and you're troubled about many things, but you don't really have to be. Okay? Saying that you don't want to be part of the urgent culture or the urgency culture or the busyness culture is not saying that, well, I'm kind of prone to laziness. Martha was somebody that was productive. She was moving, she was serving, but she was distracted at times by urgency, just like we can be distracted by urgency a lot of times. Leadership distraction, in our business, it doesn't look sinful or anything like that. It just looks busy, and that's part of the big trap that we get ourselves into when we're getting wrapped up in the urgency and all the excitement and the wearing that busyness like a badge of honor, like I mentioned. That's the trap that we need to avoid. Urgency does basically three fairly dangerous things in our organization and in ourselves, in our personal life too. First of all, it compresses thinking. Okay, it compresses thinking. Second, it shortens emotional patience. And third, it multiplies unnecessary decisions. In the last episode, we talked about making decisions, making the right decisions. Well, urgency is going to basically multiply all those decisions that you really shouldn't be making. All right, let's take a look at another framework here. So we'll go over here and we'll take a look at the top. So I want to put the top here. I'm going to put the word volume. Okay, in the middle, urgency, and down at the bottom, reaction. When the volume increases and leaders respond with urgency instead of structure and reaction, that becomes the normal operating system. When our volume is increasing, we want to tend to amp up the urgency, and we want to start reacting right away to this kind of stuff. And oftentimes that reaction basically that reaction is going to cause a few things. The reaction is going to cause a constant pivoting, a constant changing of your decisions, things like that. It's going to cause a lot of mixed signals to your team, to your clients, to the people around you. Reacting because of the volume going up, driving the urgency up, reacting is going to cause what I call emotional whiplash. You're going to be back and forth, like kind of emotional ping pong, not really knowing how to feel in the moment. And when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with others, dealing with your family, it's going to create exhaustion with those people, whether it's your team, whether it's your family, whether it's the people around you. It's just going to be very exhausting. So this kind of goes back to what we talked about before with the whole idea of our leaders becoming a bottleneck because of their decisions. Well, urgent leaders pull decisions upward, and disciplined leaders basically push clarity downward. So urgent leaders pull decisions upward, right center facing, to get all the reaction that they need, not necessarily a good position to be in, whereas a disciplined leader will basically push it down, push urgency to the side, and bring forth the clarity that's required to help make the decisions or help guide through that next piece or that next season of what's going on in the business itself. So let's take a look at our next verse, James 1:19. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Slow does not mean passive. Slow means taking our time. Slow means measured. Slow means calculated. Slow means I actually thought about this. Urgency pushes leaders to speak before they're even listening. Discernment creates space before that action. Think about how many times you got somebody that is maybe causing an urgent situation during a conversation or causing some kind of reaction or just, something's going wrong, and they're speaking. And instead of you actively listening to hear what is really being said and maybe what's not being said, but what's part of that conversation. But instead of you doing all that great active listening, you're in your own head while they're talking and you're formulating your next response, your next big zinger that you're basically going to give them. Okay, that's not the active listening. That's not taking our time. That's not being slow. That's not being measured or being calculated in our responses. That's the kind of stuff that is just going to blow up emotionally, and the reactions and the emotional triggers are going to be all over the place and cause that emotional whiplash or emotional ping pong that I mentioned earlier. Okay, another framework here for you. I want what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 3 circles here. So we've got, I'll put necessary in one to drive this point home. So necessary, and I'm going to put important. I think you can see where this is probably going. And then noise. I love this one. Okay, every demand that we have falls into one of these. It's either going to be necessary, important, or just plain noise. So if it's necessary, well, then we may want to take a look at it, and we probably have to handle it now. It's probably something that's important. We want to handle it now because maybe damage might occur if we don't. If it's important, it's something that actually moves our mission. This is a good example of this. It moves our mission forward. Okay? Moves our mission forward, but it's not time critical. Okay? Important moves our mission forward, but it's not time critical. Necessary, got to act on it now, or there could be some damage. Important, not it's going to move our mission forward, not necessarily time critical. And then noise, here's the thing about noise. Noise feels urgent. Absolutely feels urgent. There's a feeling in there. It's like, oh my goodness, this feels urgent, but it does not move our mission. It feels urgent. It is not moving our mission at all. Urgency treats everything as necessary, whereas discernment starts to apply filters. Discernment says, maybe it's not that urgent. Discernment comes in and says, maybe we can wait. Maybe we can take our time on it. Now, as I said before, there are some things that are necessary that need to be fixed right away because they could cause damage. Examples of that, there might be a legal issue in your business. You could have a cash flow problem. There could be a safety problem. That's the kind of stuff that's definitely necessary, and you better look at it right away. The important things, the things that we need to do to move our mission forward, but are not necessarily, time bound, could be things like some hiring decisions that need to be made, some strategic planning, some team development, that kind of stuff. But then we get into the noise. The noise is the stuff that feels urgent, but it's not going to move our mission forward. And that is things like random opinions, minor preferences here or there, any kind of unfiltered input coming in from the team, coming in from clients, all of that stuff that happens to just kind of take up our time and get in our way. Leadership maturity is learning to operate at the pace of peace. Let me say that again. Leadership maturity is learning to operate at the pace of peace. So the last verse I want to show you here, Philippians 4:7, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. Think about that in our businesses. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. That's maturity, learning to lean into the pace of peace. Peace is not the absence of pressure. Peace is the presence of alignment. When leaders operate from urgency, teams are going to feel anxious. The people around you are going to feel anxious. When leaders operate from peace, your teams and the people around you feel stability. So how do we break this urgency cycle? Well, there's kind of three shifts that you can do to start looking at how you want to break the urgency cycle. One of them is basically delaying your responses by design. Not every single message needs an instant reaction. I don't have to react right away. I could actually wait and, breathe. Or, sometimes I do, have a bottle of water before you make a decision. Another point is decide scheduled times for your decision making. That's pretty disciplined, I gotta admit. But actually scheduling decision-making time and the time where you're going to do your strategic thinking and protect your strategic thinking time, that's pretty disciplined, but I know people are very successful at it, and it does work. It is a part of time blocking and a time blocking technique. We time block for our emails and our calls. Why not time block for your thinking and your decision-making? That's pretty cool. And then the third one is clarifying your thresholds. What qualifies as truly urgent? What is going to make it past noise, get into important, and maybe become necessary? Okay. So you need to start learning to ask yourself some different questions. Like, does this threaten the mission? Does it threaten the people? Does it threaten the solvency? If not, it likely belongs in the important or even the not necessary or noise column. Okay. So urgency does feel powerful. I get it. But urgency over time in your business is going to erode away your clarity. Clarity requires the space. The space that you need for clarity requires the discipline. You have to be able to be disciplined to give yourself the space to bring in the clarity to make sure the urgency is not taking over. Urgency often gets equated to speed, and speed is not the enemy. But unexamined speed is. Speed for the sake of speed and doing things for the sake of doing things fast, and that's the enemy. The goal of leadership is not to move fast, it's to move in the right direction. So we talked about, over the last couple of episodes here, we've been talking about this idea of chaos and pushing chaos out and replacing with clarity. And one of the reasons that chaos even starts in our business is because leaders that become the bottleneck and want to make all the decisions and thinking that's the right thing to do, and they do that. But then you've got the other leaders that, well, maybe they don't think they need to bottleneck every decision, but everything is a fire for them. Everything is urgent. Everything is an emergency. And guess what? You're going to get that same kind of result. It's going to creep into your business, and it's going to shove the clarity out that your team requires from you. So thank you again for joining me. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm going to continue building on these topics of our leadership, how we run our business, and the operational challenges that we face. So again, if you like what you heard, I want you to click the subscribe button in the YouTube. I greatly appreciate that, and follow along. And please, by all means, reach out to me if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover. I would be glad to cover the topic and have a discussion in that. I'm going to be looking forward to the next couple months. I'm going to be looking for some guest speakers to come on as well and talk about some of their businesses, and maybe I'll even hot seat some of them and ask them some direct questions about chaos, about decision making, about urgency, and all of these kind of topics. So again, thank you very much for joining me. I love doing this. I appreciate doing this. I appreciate you all for joining me on this, and take care until the next episode.